All right, let's do a video on hand sanding. So I've got this fillet knife here that I've got sanded on the belt grinder up to 220, I believe. But I've got my handle fit and all this is polished up to 220. But I am ready to polish my blade up to get ready to etch. This super flexible fillet knife here is actually high layered Damascus. So we're ready for some hand polishing, hand sanding. So what I did to start with was I marked the end of my handles. See, I don't know if you can see it, but I marked the end of my handles, and the reason why is because I'm going to round off all these back edges. They're really sharp corners, and I want this knife to be extremely comfortable. I'm going to keep it. So I'm going to round off everything right up to that line. I want to keep that line nice and sharp and crisp, so that way my handle fits really nice and flush. Okay, but I'm going to round off all these edges and polish them up just a little bit, probably with the whatever they call them, a surfacing belt or whatever. But let me polish this up and let's get to hand sanding. All right, so I think they call these surfacing belts. They're like a Scotch-Brite pad, okay? Good enough. All right, I got my back edge all nice and rounded off, and I got this little finger weld right here. It's nice and smooth and round. We're ready to hand polish. So I said I'm sanded on the grinder up to, I believe it was 220. You can see it's pretty fine. So when I start hand sanding this, believe it or not, I'm going to start with 180. The hand sanding just does not take it off like the grinder does. But was going to put it in my board, get set up, but then I realized that my board is way too wide for a blade this big. So I had a piece of a pallet board here. It's nice and flat across the top. I just ground the corners off so it's narrow like my blade, right? So I can flip it over on either side. But I'm going to use this. So let's get this locked up in the vise and start hand sanding. See how that works? All right. All right, let's talk about sandpaper. So I use automotive grade sandpaper. I use a 3M sticky back roll. I don't know how long these rolls are. They're expensive, but they last and they're worth it. So this is a 3M Gold 180 grit, and this is a 3M Gold 320 grit, okay? So this is the sandpaper I use, and I use a 5-gallon paint stirring stick that I've cut off, that I put my sandpaper on. I use these because they're thicker than a normal paint stick and they don't flex as much, and you want something solid. You can use a file. The problem with using metal objects, and I've done it, is you wear a hole in your sandpaper and you hit your blade and you got a big scar on your blade, and it sets you way back several steps and you start all over. So the paint sticks, the wood, it will not scratch your blade. So, you know, if you accidentally cut it when you're sanding and you hit your paint stick on the wood, on the blade, it really don't matter. You're just not doing anything. But the reason why we use a paint stick, why we use something hard. So let's imagine, if you will, that you've ground your blade on your grinder and you get it up to the point you're ready to hand sand. But if you look at it like microscopically, it may not be perfectly flat. It may actually have some divots and some waves in it. So if you're sanding by hand, your hand will follow those And believe it or not, they can actually grow. They can get bigger, but they'll never go away. If you sand with something hard like a stick, you'll be sanding just the tops, and you'll sand that down all the way until it's flat. Okay? So you'll get rid of any little imperfections you have in hand sanding with on a stick. So the way I use my sandpaper is I pull out how much I want. I just put it on the corner of my table. I give it a little pull. I take my stick, set it on there, stick it, wrap it around. Do my 320. Take my stick. Stick it, wrap it around. We're ready to go. Alright, trying to get you guys the best angle to see. So, I'm going to take my 180 that I'm starting with, and I'm going to go in this direction. And when all of my sand scratches are going in that direction, I'll know it's time to change grits. I'm going to get up here too, close to the handle. So I don't mind the little forging marks there, but I want to take out what I see as scratches. I really want to use the light to my advantage here and get a good reflection on it so I can see for sure if I get all of the grinder scratches out of it. And I'm really close. There's still just a few I can barely see right here. So now all of my scratches are going this direction. Now I'm going to switch to the 320 and I'm going to go in this direction. Actually, I'm going to go straight. All right, that looks really good. Let's turn it over, do it again. Got a little bit of this 180 left. We'll go ahead and use it. Alright, see, if I'd have used a file right there, I would have scratched that blade and had to start over. Put a new piece of paper on and get back at it. I'll get a fresh piece of 320. Got some 1000 grit. So earlier I said that we're going to sand everything in this direction and then we're going to sand everything in this direction, but when I did my knife I went one direction and then I went straight. So the reason why I went straight is because I'm out of 600 grit sandpaper. So I went ahead, did my 180 at about a 45, and then I did my 320 straight. Normally I would do my 320 at a 45 in the opposite direction and then 600 straight and then to the 1000 straight. But I'm out of 600. The knife's for me. It'll be fine. But that's why I went 45 one direction and then went straight. Simple thing is, I'm out of sandpaper and I'm not going to town to get any. Alright guys, there's the basics of hand sanding and polishing. So there's my blade. It is sanded up to 1000 grit. It is ready for the etch. So, start hand sanding. Alright, so hand sanding, huge pain in the butt, but well worth it. So there's my blade after a 5-minute etch cycle. Couldn't see any of that Damascus beforehand, but we're going to get it in for another 5 minutes and then do a coffee etch. But start hand sanding your blades.